wow, we just went from zero in passive income on this specific asset class to over 20,000 a month. I see now that that's more connected. And so we've started using that and built out this whole matrix so that when people come in and they're like, what do I invest in first? We want to figure out who they are as an investor and then allow them to narrow all of these different ideas down based upon their specific niche. So they go in and they look at each asset class that we've been able to identify through our podcast, and they can see from their profile what they would like about it and what they would not like about it.
Your relationship with money matters. I'm Michelle Perkins, and this is the Money and You podcast, where I will be breaking down your relationship with money, offering tough love money tips, and a money dating plan that will focus on lifting the barriers to success to help pave the way for better money practices and increased wealth. It's time to take control to live a limit-free life. It starts today. Hello, hello. Welcome to the Money and You Show. I'm Michelle Perkins, your host, and another great episode. Today we're going to talk a lot about passive income, something everybody hears about. A lot of people don't exactly know how to make that happen, but surely it's a something that can help you to live that more limit-free life. And we have an expert on today who has figured that out and is helping people to do exactly that. And he has a wonderful gift for everybody today. So without further ado, I'm going to give you a very brief introduction. Russ Morgan is co-founder and partner at Wealth Without Wallstreet, an online community that seeks to re-educate business owners and families on how money truly works. Wallstreet is not just a street in New York that puts New York is a place that puts America's money at risk, but it's also a commonly taught mindset. Welcome to the show, Russ. I don't know if I screwed up that last line. I'll let you fix that for me if I did. I felt like I did.
No worries, Michelle. Thank you so much for having me. It's grateful to be on and to try to figure out, is there really passive income? I know that's a question a lot of people ask. And how do I turn my active income into passive income if it does exist?
Yeah, thank you. And I know your work is in part for everybody, but it's in part for business owners. And how does that factor, if you're a business owner out there, how are you trying to help that business owner with this concept?
Yeah, one of the most efficient ways to build wealth is being a business owner. So if you are, right, you're able to grow wealth at a much greater rate than if you're just investing in any type of asset. So kudos to you for being that. If you're an entrepreneur or a entrepreneur and you're trying to get there, finding these side hustles that you might be able to make into a business is a good objective. So I find that business owners are very busy trying to find ways to constantly grow their company. And one of the biggest mistakes that we make early on is that we don't know how to get the money out of the business to us and how to grow it to a point where maybe we could sell it worth, and it be a 7 or 8 or 10 figure type number. And so we're just trying to teach business owners some basic mechanics of how do we take the thing that we're good at building income in and turn it into something on the side that can start building passive income for one real reason, is that where we don't end up becoming, as Michael Gerber said in the E-Myth, is we don't become the baker who starts resenting their job because now they're everything and they have to go to work and not want to go to work. So our goal is to figure out how to build passive income streams that can exceed our monthly expenses. So going to work is part of our passion and not because we have to, because it forces us, because that's the only thing that's paying the bills.
Yeah. Thank you. I love that. I love that you brought up the E-Myth. That's such a great book. And I always have that baker, that pie maker, in my brain when I'm talking to business owners, because It's just such a great imagery of, the person who loved to bake pies and then decided to build a business around that. And suddenly baking pies has gotten to be a real drag. So, I think that's terrific. And so are you talking about just scaling your business, or are you talking about something different than that?
Different than that. And I'm glad you mentioned the baker first. My wife was a dentist, and I remember her early on loving being a dentist until she had to be doing HR in the middle of the night, until she became the person that when something broke inside the office, she also became the maintenance person, right? Had to coordinate all of those things. She was the person that was doing payroll, and she was dealing with any customer service issues that happened after time. And she became one of those resentful business owners where she was going to work because she had to and not because she wanted to. And we eventually ended up selling her dental practice because she fell out of love with it. And I think that that's sad for so many of us who love what we do, at least initially, that we can't find that way. And there's a lot of things that we can talk about of ways that can avoid that. And one of the ways is that we find ways to get money out of our business effectively. Here's a little tip that I share with a lot of different business owners is that they don't think about how do I get money from the business to me personally. And when we do, we make the mistake of putting it in one single account in our personal checking. And we all know that we have all of these hands grabbing at that money. Mm-hmm. And because we're not real organized with it, we don't end up doing anything with it because we're afraid of what the next expense is that has to come and get money out of it. So we never turn that part of our brain on that teaches us how to be an investor. And so we just allow for that money to sit, or we reinvest it into our business and hope that our business continues to grow, but still feeling the burden of like, well, what happens if we're in a recession? What happens if, my product is no longer in favor of what it used to be or the service that I provide? And so we're trying to teach people that we need to run our personal lives with the same vigor that we run our businesses. And one of those things is like a P&L. So just teaching people how to build a personal family P&L, just the way that they operate under their business, is like a simple hack that can actually start to tell you how much cash you have available so that you can then start investing from there.
Wow, that's so interesting. And we have something in common. My husband's a dentist and also really did not enjoy any of the business financial aspects of this, and nor did he really expect it. So I have always done all of that. And it's quite interesting. Dentists were a popular client of mine when I started my business, and I always thought, I need to go knock on some dental school doors and see if I can teach some business for emerging dentists because it's just so sad. Anyway, it does have a tendency to undermine their enjoyment of being dentists. But you bring up a great point, and it applies to almost every profession, like that. I mean, people come out of school as almost anything and don't know how to run a business. And so I've always found that very fascinating that they, the schools even think that that's going to be possible for them to do, but that's what happens. So I love that that you brought that up, and the importance. I like the personal kind of P&L idea. And for business owners listening, it is crucial that you think of your business as something that is, paying you and is providing you with investment capital. I went back to myself too and starting my business and just thinking it's all about putting the money back into the business so the business can grow. And meanwhile, you're over here just trying to survive on other income, usually.
I remember my wife working for the first 2 years at her dental practice and didn't pay herself because she was so worried about the business not being able to sustain, a downturn, right? Like, because she didn't know what the future held. And that was... And I think we're so focused on the business that we forget that we started the business not for the business's purpose, but for us.
Yeah.
Like, we need to make money for ourselves.
Right.
And this idea of passive income, well, you've heard the old adage that opportunities find cash. Well, if we don't have access to cash, where do those opportunities find? Yeah. They find somebody else's cash. And so then we miss out on all of these deals of a lifetime. But I will tell you, Michelle, I have a friend of mine we run a passive income mastermind for 8 and 9 figure entrepreneurs. And he has this saying, he says, a deal of a lifetime comes around twice a week. So the beauty is that you have an opportunity as long as you get access to cash and you start training your brain to think like an investor.
Yeah, thank you. And so talk to me about this access. Well, talk to me about something else first, because I know one of the points that you brought up was your investor DNA. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, investor DNA was something that I stumbled upon. I used to be a certified financial planner, and I thought that that meant something. And I was trained that, investments were made based upon this risk tolerance that, included different parts of your age and your willingness to invest in certain market classes and what your need was. And what I experienced personally was not that. What I experienced personally is that when people invest in items that they don't understand and don't really relate to, they don't put a lot of money into it. And so they don't have a lot of success. For instance, the first thing I invested in outside of the traditional markets was I bought a single family home and put it as a long-term rental. And, it didn't really excite me that much, Michelle. Like I'd seen friends and clients who were making lots of money in this, were building wealth. And I thought that was the only way to make money, was that you had to own, some form of real estate. So I did it. And I didn't want to buy any more after that first one. And, I was getting $100 or $200 a month every single month from it. And it was not exciting. And so I didn't put anything in it because I thought that was the only way. And it wasn't until I stumbled across this idea, listening to Tom Wheelwright. I don't know if you're familiar with Tom, but he's the former CPA for Robert Kiyosaki. He's written a lot of different books. Tax-Free Wealth is probably his most famous. And he was sitting there having a conversation on a podcast with the owner of the Colby Index. And he was talking about how when his clients were coming into a CPA practice and they were wanting to expand their businesses, he was having them do this Colby Index, which was helping them understand whether or not they would be a good fit to buy in that business. And I thought, man, I bet you that would apply in investing as well. And so we actually connected the personality assessment to the way people invest. And we started interviewing all of these different guests who are making lots of different passive income in different asset classes. And we started asking them and doing that personality assessment with them. We used DISC, the DISC personality assessment, and said, okay, which profile are you? And then why is it that you like this investment class? What is it that you like about it? What do you not like about it? And so we built this whole matrix around the way that we see different investments by the way that God made us. And based upon that, I started investing in things that got me more excited, because I'm one of those that love being more hands-on. I like to be involved in the idea making of it. And we started investing, one of the first things we did, we built a short-term rental business. And we went from 0 units to over 26 units in like 18 months. And I got really excited because I could provide input and ideas to it. And we could then hire someone who could run it. And I saw, oh, wow, we just went from 0 in passive income on this specific asset class to over $20,000 a month. I see now that that's more connected. And so we've started using that and built out this whole matrix so that when people come in and they're like, what do I invest in first? We want to figure out who they are as an investor and then allow them to narrow all of these different ideas down based upon their specific niche. So they go in and they look at each asset class that we've been able to identify through our podcast, and they can see from their profile what they would like about it and what they would not like about it. And so now they avoid getting into things like I did, which was long-term rental, because that was definitely a boring asset class for my profile, to getting into ones that fit. So for that dentist, the dentist loves that boring profile. They love investing in real estate. That's a big one for them, right? So it's not that it's good or bad, it's who it's for. And then they will invest one from their own comfort level with it, but also they'll invest a lot more and we'll see results accordingly.
Very interesting. I really love that, because I start my programs, whether it's career coaching or money coaching, with an assessment. And I think that is so important to really understand the individual person before you start talking about things that are just not going to resonate with them, and it's very interesting for people. It's very interesting for them because they get a new understanding of themselves. They think, I think most people think, well, if it makes me money, I can do it. That'll be fine. But you don't realize that you're bringing your whole self into this. And if it is boring to you, or it's not something you even want to learn about, it's going to be very difficult for you to really do well with that.
Yeah, when you hear the saying that you can do it because someone else did it, that's a lie. Like, unless you possess all the same characteristics that person has, resources, network, and so on, it's not the same. Like we all are built uniquely, so we need to invest and do things from our unique gifts. We have talents that we can actually reach higher levels because of other than other people. So when people look at our investment profile and they look at the things that we invest in, we just say, hey, here's just an idea of things that we've done, but please don't invest in these because we're having success. Yeah. You need to understand who you are first and then invest from that. And you'll see when you start investing in things that you have a better understanding in and you're more aligned with them, you'll see results. And we've seen so many clients and so many people that have come through our events and masterminds who now have been able to stop trading time for money if that was their major objective, or continue to pursue their purpose in the careers or businesses that they run because they know that, hey, I get to go to work because I want to, and because I have this passive income that equals or exceeds my monthly expenses now.
I love that you brought that up. And you know, it's so interesting today, especially with social media, and you have so many people telling you what to do, you know, take these 5 steps and invest in these 3 things. And it's very hard to remember that, you know, you need to be true to yourself in this. And it's not going, you know, I think we delude ourselves into thinking we can do what other people did because it was right for them. I actually, now that I'm thinking about this, my dad had a dental practice. My dad was an orthodontist, and he built it the way the most successful guy in town built it, and he did very well with it. And but about 16 years in, he got a little depressed. And he didn't want to do it anymore because even though he was successful, he copied the guy's model. Their personalities could not have been more different. And my dad he is a scientist. He was a scientist, and he thought like that, and he wanted to, you know, dig into things like a scientist would. And the other guy was not that way, so it was easy for him. And my dad ended up switching his career, and it was exactly what you're saying, only he didn't have any of that awareness that what he was modeling was not in alignment with his, you know, who he was. So very, very, very interesting point. And I think one that people don't necessarily want to pay attention to because they kind of think they can do it regardless, you know. So it's a brilliant point.
Well, when you're trying to figure out investing in general, it's super hard. And I think that the investment world has made it purposefully hard for us to understand. I remember being an investment advisor, and it was my job to get you, Michelle, to give me your money and let me handle it and manage it for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And you just go and do your thing. You be a great business owner. You keep your head down. I'll take care of my job and all will work out. Well, unfortunately, I think that that's not a good model. One, we've seen so few people who, quote unquote, retire in a position where they're not afraid of running out of money. I don't believe that the way that we define financial freedom in the typical sense is easy to understand. Most people think it's a number. They think, oh, I need $3 million, $5 million, $10 million, and, you know, fill in the blank ABC account, right? IRAs, 401ks, checking accounts, whatever. And that's not true because it's so hard to know what percentage can you take out? How long will that last? Will it truly last? What happens if something happens? Will I end up running out of money? That's the biggest fear. Yeah. Other people believe, oh, well, if I pay off all my debts, if I'm debt free, then now I'm financial free. But then they realize, well, that's not true either, because even if I have everything paid off, I still have to pay for the lifestyle that I have. You know, right. The gas isn't free, the food isn't free, right? All the things. So we have to have some amount of money coming in. And what does that look like? So my business partner and I just follow an age-old model that, you know, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad author, probably made most popular, is that financial freedom is when our passive income exceeds our monthly expenses. Mm-hmm. That's any dollars that come in that we're not actively working for. And people say, Russ, well, is passive income really passive? And the answer is no. But passive doesn't mean uninvolved, right? To some degree, I'm involved. So I'm involved in either, you know, doing research on the person I'm investing in, or the business I'm investing in, or the investment I'm making. I need to understand what those operators do. How do they operate? What's their track record? Where are they doing this for the first time? Have I, you know, done research to make sure there's no litigation out there? Have I asked them questions like, how will I lose all my money? Have I built out a model that helps me do the best due diligence possible? That may be for some people who are truly passive investing. Or have I built something? Like when we built a short-term rental business, I didn't work in the day-to-day, but I helped, pave the path for this operator, 1, to hire them, 2, to train them, 3, to be able to follow up and manage the books with them that they ran it. Mm-hmm. So I put in a little bit of time, but as a whole, I was very passive in the business. So you have to be active at some point, and maybe your business that you're working in or running right now can become passive. Maybe you build it where you hire an operator, a president, CEO, and you step out, and if it can continue to grow and operate without you and pay you, then that becomes passive. Any of those things that get to a point that exceeds your monthly expenses, now you're in a position to say, if that will continue as long into the future, then I am truly financially free. And so I always tell people the easiest way to know where you are, just add up all your passive income right now, divide it into the amount of monthly expenses you have, and as a percentage how close you are to financial freedom. Meaning, if I had $1,000 a month coming in, let's just say I had a couple of rental properties, and I was spending $10,000 a month to live, then I'm 10% of the way there. And what I have seen is when people realize that light comes on, they go, oh, I know the goalposts. I know where it is. It's not going to change. Now I can actually start running hard toward that. They make every financial decision in light of that. So people say, Russ, if I have this money, should I buy an asset or should I pay off a debt? And I was like, well, you tell me. How much income will it produce if you buy the asset? And they tell me, and I go, well, what if you paid off a debt? How much would it free up in monthly expenses? They tell me. I say, now, which one is greater? Okay, which one should you do? I mean, the formula tells you what to do. So now when you have a framework, you don't need a quote unquote guru. You don't need a financial advisor to help you. Like, you can make these decisions informed. And do you need to do them all? No, you can, delegate this to someone else, but I don't think we should abdicate it to someone else.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I love the question of, is it truly passive? Because people do have the idea in their mind that they put some money into something and they walk away and they don't look at anything. They don't, study the results of anything. And that's just not smart. I mean, I guess you can do it, but, if you're looking for this, end goal of being financially free, you've got to be involved. It's just like, anything else related to money. You can't avoid being aware and knowledgeable about what's going on. So, but there are levels of passivity, I guess that's a word. And I think people should be aware of what they're looking at. I do know people who think that if they have long-term rentals and a property manager, they never have to think about it again. But, that's not the case, in my opinion. People think in my world, in the coaching world, people talk a lot about digital products being a passive income source. And the effort that goes into creating digital products, at least initially. I mean, maybe maybe the huge effort is just at the beginning or for the first year or two, but there is no way around some work if you are looking to get to this goal.
Yeah. Well, in order for it to be passive for you, it has to be active for somebody else. I mean, so that's always the thing, is that we need to understand who is being active so that it's passive for us. And you mentioned digital products. You can build a digital product. Well, who's going to actively manage the funnel? Who's going to market it? Who's going to make sure that all the payment links are connected? Who's going to answer the refund request? Right. How do we handle that? It has to be active for someone, right, in order for it to be passive for us. And that's just the question that we ask. There are ways to become more passive, but you just have to build systems. And it's always based upon that investor DNA. There's certain people that want to be really, really hands off. And their profiles are going to then look for asset classes that make that more possible than not. But still, they need to understand what their investor buy box are. Like, people don't think about what's the time frame. If you talk to my business partner and you present him with an investment opportunity, the first question he's going to say is, how long will it take for me to start receiving cash flow? And if your answer is more than 90 days, it's an immediate no. You could tell him it's going to 10x in 6 months, and he will say no, because his buy box only says, I invest in things that produce cash flow in the first 90 days, or I'm out. So he's very clear. So he takes his investor buy box and he lays it over the framework of everything that he's considering investing money into. And if it doesn't meet that criteria, he doesn't allow emotion to take over. So many of us are not really good investors. Robert Kiyosaki, I quote him a lot. I think he's really smart in this area where he says that there's no good or bad investments. They're just good or bad investors. I think most people don't have good frameworks to follow. They don't have models. They haven't built it out and thought about it ahead of time, so they don't get emotional. They don't see enough deals. What makes a good investor? Someone who has a lot of reps. Someone who has seen a lot of deals. If you're only seeing one opportunity every month, every year, you've not seen enough opportunities to know if it's good or bad. Whenever my buddy says a deal of a lifetime comes around twice a week, well, he's put himself in the flow of those deals, but he also has seen thousands and thousands of deals. So he truly knows what is a deal of a lifetime, what looks like one, but really isn't. And I think that's important, is that no matter what we're doing on the front end, we're going to have to be active and then figure out who's going to be the person that takes over that activity so we can be passive.
That's a fantastic answer. Yeah, I love that it has to be active for somebody. That's definitely something to think about. Something else that you just said that was so interesting to me. This whole thing has been very interesting. When you were talking about the thousands of deals that the person is looking at to find the 2 per week, when I hear that, I'm like, well, how do I have a job if that's what I'm doing? Like that's too many hours for me. So how does one balance this with their regular profession?
Well, it's always the 5 to 9. Now, we're all familiar with the 9 to 5, right? And many of us are working way outside of that. But I remember one of the guys we were interviewing on our podcast, he had followed this kind of passive income operating system. And he's like, Russ, what I do is I wake up at 5 a.m., I work till 9, I go do my 9 to 5. And then when I get home, I work for 5 to 9 in the evening, working on this side project. And he did that for 3 years straight, Michelle. And then he was able, through his, quote unquote, active activity on the side, to build a business that was big enough to take over his monthly expenses. And he walked away from his 9 to 5. Now he works 3 or 4 hours a day in that job. And the rest of it is passive to him, which is a lot less than he was working actively in his main profession beforehand. And he travels. He has that, truly laptop lifestyle that some people talk about. Mm-hmm. He's living it, but it required him to work in the 5 to 9. So for some people, that's it. For others, right, they literally show up on webinars, they show up in groups, masterminds or whatever, and they try to get that experience in events. We just got back from an event in San Diego. We had about 100 investors there that are building an 8-figure exit or more. And that's what we did. We go intense and we focus on due diligence and how to look at deals. We had a bunch of deal operators come and present deals to us. We analyze them. We break them down. We talk about what are those key factors in them that would make this deal a good deal or a bad deal for us. And you learn, right? You just have to get reps some way. And, not that you're going to be perfect, but some people are truly professional investors. That's all they do. And so they see a lot more. Yeah. For the rest of us, we have to, figure out, what are we going to do? We're going to sacrifice, going to have trade-offs one way or another. What's most important to us? How do we gain back the 9 to 5 of our life? Maybe it's working 5 to 9 for a couple of years, doing this and getting, more equipped so we can get out of the 9 to 5 in the future. Yeah,
that's really fascinating. So you did this for yourself, correct? I mean,
correct.
Okay. And so can you tell me a little about that process that you went through to get to this point?
Yeah. So my business partner and I, in 2017, we started our podcast. And the goal for us is that we had built up a good amount of cash following this concept called becoming your own banker. I don't know if you've ever read that book or heard of it. Mm-hmm. I had an opportunity to meet the author of that in an event in 2009. And he mentored me because he actually lived in the same city as I did for about 10 or 11 years before he passed. And the thing I didn't know what to do is, what do I do with this cash? And so we started this podcast called Wealth Without Wall Street and started interviewing people who are investing and doing all of these unique and interesting things. We had no idea how to do it ourselves. And so we just started slowly taking our cash and investing in these projects and starting to, see results, some good, some bad, right? We started small. And ultimately, when we first started reporting on it in June of 2020, we had about $2,500 a month in passive income. And then slowly we just continued to grow because what you track grows, but more importantly, what you track and report on grows exponentially. And because we started reporting this to the world, we were accountable, not only accountable to our families, but we were accountable to our audience who was listening. And we grew it to over $50,000 a month. So my business partner and I are truly financially free. We've built, some amazing companies. We have operators in all of our businesses. The thing that we love to do, because this is our purpose and passion, is being on podcasts and teaching people what we're doing and trying to show other, as we say, other beggars where the bread is, because we're just beggars too. And we're just trying to show other people what we've learned. And there's a lot of experts out there that have been able to teach us. We continue to learn. So, just these lessons are, we wrote a book called Wealth Without Wall Street, the 3 steps to freedom through passive income, where we took 10 years of our knowledge and put in it. We've built all these free resources, these investor DNA ebooks, the passive income operating system ebooks, the infinite banking concept ebooks, all these things where we just took all of this knowledge that we've, gained and just try to give it to people. Because I just remember, growing up in a blue collar family. My dad was a contractor. My mom was a school teacher. Money was what was made that day was spent usually that day.
Yeah.
And I didn't know this personally. And I didn't learn it when I was a financial advisor. When the markets crashed in '08, I can tell you the investment advisory group I was in, everybody were palm up to the sky wondering what happened. Why did it happen? What was going to keep it from happening again? They didn't have the answers. All the mentors I had at that point in time were not providing certainty to me. It was just this, we'll figure it out. We'll just ride it out like a bad haircut. And I thought, that's not really, comforting. I want to figure out, how do I know how to become financially free and not have to work until I'm 60, not have to wait till my kids are long out of school and now have their own kids before I get to quote unquote retire. And I've read the Bible for a number of years, and I haven't found anywhere where it said Moses retired or anyone in the Bible for that sake. Retirement is a new age word. How do we pursue our passion? How do we continue to stay in service doing our highest level opportunities? So for me, it's this podcast. It's being able to share what I've learned with others and continuing to hopefully help people who want to become financially free get there faster.
There's some divine intervention here, because my last guest was talking very much about reinventing, our whole concept of retirement and the history of retirement, and sort of how it was very interesting, and it's almost the perfect segue to what you're talking about. So kind of interesting how that worked out, and I just love what you're saying. If we go back to your investments and the start of all of this. I was trying to think about what people in the audience might be hearing and what they might be thinking. And one of the things is, some of the things work, some of them don't. So how, that's obvious, that's what's going to happen. But emotionally, how many failures do they need to be before you think, maybe I should rethink this? I mean, what is the thought process and the mindset as you go through this?
Yeah, I mean, one, I think failure is inevitable in anything that we're trying to build as we're learning for the first time.
Right.
You can gain better insights and hopefully learn from others so you can borrow their information instead of having to pay full retail. So hopefully by, being involved in groups and in masterminds and other things that people who've done that before, maybe you don't have to learn all the same lessons. But I also think that we have to understand what the real goal is. I know you said that you do assessments for people and try to figure out what they're trying to accomplish. And that's so important. Like, why are we trying to do any of this? And I remember this guy, Rick, who came to one of our events. His goal is that he had some older kids in a previous marriage, divorced, got remarried, and had this 4 or 5 year old boy. I don't remember how old he was at the time. And he had this goal is like, I just don't want his life to go by as fast as my older kids did. I want to be able to spend time with them. He said something so simple but profound that I would love to make sure every single morning that I made him breakfast and I took him to school. And he had not been able to do that because the career he was in demanded him to be there early. And so oftentimes before his son even woke up and was not able to take him to school, wasn't able to pick him up, was getting those just few hours in the evening before he went back to bed. And I think we've all probably experienced that. At least I know I have early on. And he said, man, I've got to figure this out. And he came to one of our events and he had this very small idea and he shared it with this member in our mastermind who just happened to be sitting there listening to him, and they love to pour into people too. And they said, let me put my arm around you and show you what this opportunity really is for you, right? Like you're thinking about it like this, but from my angle, I see a much bigger opportunity. And this guy was looking at buying and selling raw land and selling them on terms and getting these monthly payments coming in. And it was, and doing a class on that. And he had seen a lot of people in our community had done that and was starting to have some success. But it was going to take him, 3 or 4 years to really get that going.
Right.
And this business, that he had been working in was a development company. He had been, leading large scale teams doing $100 million projects. And my friend of the mastermind said, man, why are you trying to buy small pieces of property? If you understand this, why don't you buy bigger pieces of property? So where would I get the money? He said, money is free whenever you know how you have the experience and know how to do something. He said, I'll lend you the money. And Michelle, within 3 months, he went out and bought a piece of property, sold it within a couple of months from there that equaled his whole year's salary.
Wow.
And he did that one more time and realized that this was very possible. And he walked away from the job that he was missing out on spending time with that 4 or 5-year-old son. And I can remember his face the first time I got to talk to him. And I was like, what have you been doing for the last couple of weeks? He said, cooking my son breakfast and driving him to school. And I thought, man, that changes the game, right? Like, so yeah. I think when people understand what their why is, they're willing to do the hard thing. But if you don't understand why you're doing it, if it's just a good idea, you probably won't follow it through. But if you connect it to, hey, my kids probably are not going to want to go throw the Frisbee with me when they're 30 years old, as they will when they're 13.
Yeah.
Right. My daughter's not going to really care about, me reading her story as much, whenever she's, an adult,
right,
as when she is
way
when she's
before
a
that,
15-year-old.
actually, Russ, I'm sorry.
Well, it's one of those things that I speak from my own experience of thinking through all this time that passed by. And when I realized that was the most important thing to me, it got me more motivated to focus. And I knew what the objective was. I knew what the goalpost was, and I could really strive to hit that.
Yeah. Wow, this is really great. And listening to you, I can hear, the passion that you have for helping people to be able to do this, which you weren't finding in your earlier sort of, financial advisor role. I have a lot of people who come on the show who have done that work and found that, they were a little, I don't know, it wasn't helping people in the way that they had hoped it would. And they could see better ways. So I love that you're bringing that up. And I also, I can also hear how knowledgeable you are and how much you've studied this and done it yourself. And so, because I do think there are a lot of people out there talking about doing, passive income strategies or whatever who haven't really necessarily, maybe they've hit it with one type, might not be for you or I, and so it doesn't matter anyway, as you were earlier saying. So how can people get involved with you and your partner to learn from you?
Yeah. So we built a page. I want to give away as much stuff as possible. So if you go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com/money and you, right, as the name of the podcast you're listening to, is there, you can get access to all these resources, and many of them are giving away the best ideas that we've ever created, and all for free. If you decide that you want to talk to one of our coaches and ask them like how this applies to you, we've set up a free call link on there, and it's totally free. You can ask any question you want to, and their job is to just hear your questions and try to point you toward the resources. We built an online community that's over 8,000 people that are only focused on trying to build passive income. So people will become members in it. And we love to try to just continue to help and serve you along the way.
That's fantastic. And I love these online communities. I think you can get a tremendous amount from joining one and showing up regularly. I loved what you said earlier. You didn't say it exactly like this, but basically, the measurement of things. I mean, measure what matters, because it'll come to you more when you're measuring, when you're tracking, when you're holding yourself accountable in some way, or having other people do that for you. So in the online community, is it primarily you're teaching people how to do this? People are they able to ask questions and learn more about what they're doing?
Yeah. We just knew on our podcast it was really hard for us to connect with the people that were listening. And so we built this online community, so you can go into any app store that you use and just type in Wealth Without Wall Street and download it. It's totally free to join. And you can ask questions. The only thing we don't allow in there is like solicitation because we want people to be learning. And there's free events that happen all the time, online events that you can connect with. And there's these free courses and stuff that we've built that help people go through those frameworks. And it for us was just a way for us to just be able to personally connect until we started doing live events. Like it was the way that people were able to, connect with other people who are thinking about this. Because you may be the quote unquote weird one in your world, right? You may not have others that are around you that are thinking about, how do I build passive income that exceeds my monthly expenses? And, we recently did a podcast on 401k versus 401 lake house, and we were teaching people of how we've done that, right? We are big believers in other ways to build wealth outside of the typical ways. And, people would be like, well, man, if I told somebody in my office that I wasn't putting money in my 401k or I wasn't doing this defined benefit plan, they would look at me like I had three eyeballs.
Yeah.
And, I need a community that supports me. Or like, here it is. There you go.
Wow, that is great. Okay, so people can go to wealthwithoutwallstreet.com and get information on all of this.
That's great.
Yeah, really exciting. And what you're talking about, I mean, it's bad enough that people don't have the basics out there with regard to financial literacy in the first place. But what you're talking about is the kind of thing you definitely don't hear about unless you go and do your research and seek it out. So I love that you're helping people to understand this better, because I do think a lot of people, is this community for people who already have enough money to jump in? Is it okay for people who don't feel that they have the extra cash right now to do much and just want to learn?
I think everybody has that question. Is it right for me yet? Right?
Yeah.
Like that's the hardest part. Everybody feels like they're broke. And here's the key is that, if you've ever played the game Cash Flow, you realize the janitor card or the police officer card may be the best one to get in that game because your monthly expenses are low. There's all ways to win this game. It has not necessarily how much money you have, but what you can learn.
Yeah.
So if you've been listening and you're trying to sum this up, 1, financial freedom is defined when your passive income is greater than your monthly expenses. 2, you got to have a system, right? The way that you can be successful is you build a system and you follow it. And the best time to start it would have been 25 years ago. And the next best time is today. So,
as
go to
as with everything
Yeah.
money, now is the time.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, Russ, this has been great, and I really love what you're doing, and really love the way that you explain it. You're super articulate about it, so I would imagine people learn pretty quickly from you. And thank you for what you do and giving people, kind of the inspiration and hope that this is possible, because we hear about it a lot, but I think you're doing a good job helping others and proving it out. So, great to have you on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on, Michelle.
Yeah. And listeners, thank you for being here. We love having you on the Money and You show. I thought today's show was a really exciting one. And it really kind of it partners up with the previous show. So if you want to rethink retirement and rethink your financial freedom, I would listen to both. And this is just great. I would reach out to Wealth Without Wall Street and get some of those freebies and find out more about what they're doing and subscribe to their podcast. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. Hope it got you feeling kind of excited and hopeful about what you can do out there. And So glad that you're listening to the Money and You Show. Please share the show if you liked it. I bet you know somebody who could benefit from this show. And we'll see you next week.